Okay, I think I have this recording. Yep. Okay, I do. Okay, hi, Allie.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you? Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, what's it like having aplastic anemia? Tell me your
Super
story. What's going
fun.
on?
Every day is surviving.
Yeah, when were you diagnosed with aplastic anemia?
Uh, I was diagnosed with aplasticemia in 2023,
Mhm.
but it was not the first of my health challenges.
Really?
My, the week the world shut down with COVID, my appendix ruptured. And I had to go to no doctors would see me. I went to urgent care. They gave me a COVID test and sent me home for 5 to 7 business days with crippling abdominal pain. My appendix ruptured on the way home. Nobody would see me. Finally, I called my OB and I said, I'm in crippling pain. Like I need help. And she sent me for testing. Very long story short, I had to go to the emergency room with a fever in the height of the pandemic. They did emergency appendectomy surgery and sent me home. I got a phone call shortly after that they found a 1.5 centimeter cancerous tumor on my appendix. Very rare, very slow growing, but very aggressive. And
My goodness.
they did a test 6 months later and it was clear, and everybody thought it was just a fluke. Flash forward to November of 2021, a year and a half later, I again had stomach pain. They found a 4 centimeter cancerous tumor in my uterus. So that came out. I had chemo and radiation. I had an oncology team that was following me. And at my 1 year appointment, they said, "Well, congratulations. You're cancer free, but your platelets are going down and your red blood cells are going down. We're going to send you to a leukemia specialist at Sloan Kettering in New York for something possibly aplastic anemia." And the name doesn't give it justice to what it actually
The
is.
name is terrible.
The name is terrible. It
It
sounds very
it's
mild.
it sounds
Like, oh,
super
it's
mild.
aplastic anemia. It's nothing serious. And my stepmom actually was like, "Have you Googled what your doctors think you have?" And I was like, "I'm not Googling. I'm just going to meet with this team and we'll see what happens." And I met with the leukemia team and I met with hematologists, and they were afraid to give it the official name because there's no checklist, right? They're like, we just have to watch and see what happens, but this is what we think. And it very quickly went from mild aplastic anemia to severe aplastic anemia. And about a year later, they're talking about a bone marrow transplant. And I just
So
remember thinking to
you went
myself,
from
how did we get there?
you had cancer on your appendix a year later, then it was on your uterus, and then a year later, aplastic anemia. Like
Yeah,
you did not get any kind of a break at all.
no, it's
That's
been an
crazy.
interesting couple of years to say the least.
My goodness. I've never heard anything like that before. I mean, so when you were diagnosed with cancer originally, where were you living? Where were you diagnosed? I would imagine you're in New York since you mentioned Sloan Kettering.
So I live in Connecticut. Thankfully, we are very close to all of these wonderful cancer centers. When they found it on my appendix and my uterus, they watched me through the Bennett Cancer Center in Stamford. Aplastic anemia and PNH are so rare that there aren't specialists in Connecticut. And they gave me a choice of Dana-Farber in Massachusetts or Sloan Kettering in New York. Another challenge is that doctors aren't licensed in Connecticut. So every time you have a telehealth with a doctor, you have to drive to New York.
They never make it easy.
They
It's
don't.
always so unnecessarily complicated. My
And
goodness.
life interrupting.
Right, absolutely.
It's like
So
I'll deal with the health piece of it, but you can't, I have two little kids and a full-time job. Make it
so
easy on me. Like,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so if we can wind back a little bit. when were you diagnosed with aplastic anemia? What month and what year?
It was the day I quit my job of 10 years. I had a wonderful opportunity. It was February of 2024.
February 20.
I gave my job notice that I was starting this new opportunity, and my phone rings with my oncologist who said, by the way, I think we really should get you in with this other team to explore aplastic anemia and PNH. And I was like, really? And I remember being terrified. Like, hopefully this new company will support my new medical adventure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
I mean,
terrifying.
your third medical venture in what seemed like, 20 minutes, you're just getting thrown at constantly with all this going on. My goodness.
Yeah.
So you so from the sounds of it though, you didn't have any symptoms of aplastic anemia before you had it because all your symptoms were from your cancer before you were having stomach issues.
It was completely out of left field. I remember, so my best friend is wheelchair bound, and we love going to Six Flags together. And we went to Six Flags the weekend before, and I pushed him 225 pounds in a wheelchair. You have to use the exit ramps of the roller coasters because the entrance isn't ADA compliant with the stairs. So I'm pushing him around, completely just exhausted. And I had my appointment on Monday, and that's when my doctor was like, your labs look off. Maybe it was because of all your, excitement over the weekend. We'll test again in a month and see. I was such an anomaly. Like, I'm in great shape. I don't look sick. My company had no idea because I just started. I didn't want to introduce all of my medical baggage. Nobody had any idea. You look healthy while your body is falling apart.
That's kind of it's a blessing and a curse at the same time where you're not physically feeling really bad, but then again, people aren't taking you very seriously, it seems like, whenever you tell them, hey, I'm actually really, really sick. And they're like, yeah, but you're walking around. Like, I don't see, you don't even look skinny or anything. I mean, that can come up sometimes, but that is very frustrating with that part. But again, also a blessing because you're not feeling that all the time. But
Yeah, I felt great leading up to it. Um,
that's that's crazy. I mean, that's so you were diagnosed in February 2024 though. And then what happened after that? What were the next steps after you were diagnosed with it? What did your doctor tell you?
so they referred me to Sloan Kettering February of 2024, and it was about a 4 to 6 month process before they actually diagnosed me. They did a ton of lab work. They did the lovely bone marrow biopsy that we all love. Fun fact, they don't put you under in Sloan Kettering. So Stanford, they put you under and they,
They
knock you
put me
out, wake you
under.
up.
I don't know how
At
you
Sloan
did it
Kettering,
not
they
going
don't.
under. God bless you. That sounds horrible.
It's terrible. It's actually probably the worst part of it because you're wide awake with I think they give you it's called lidocaine, which is basically Novocaine.
Right.
And it only numbs the surface. So we won't go down that rabbit hole, but you survive.
It's not
Um,
fun, but yeah, I mean, yeah, God bless you for going through that.
so in July of 2024, they started talking about a bone marrow transplant at some point in my life. And I remember thinking like, but I'm young and healthy. Like, why? And as things quickly started deteriorating, they're like, we're actually going to test your siblings now. So we're ready when it's go time. And I remember saying, how long? Nobody would give me an answer. I met with a doctor who wasn't so nice before I found my doctor now, who I love. And she said, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm like, can you tell me days, weeks, months, or years? That's all I want. And again, I was met with, I don't have a crystal ball. Okay, I work full time and I have two kids. You're asking me to put 2 years of my life on the table. Like,
Mhm.
are we talking about doing this soon or when I'm 60? And again, nobody would give me any insight. And I think a lot of it is they just don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so we started doing the wait and see. I was transferred to a doctor who specializes in aplastic anemia and PNH, Dr. Ronnie Tamari, at Sloan Kettering, and she's wonderful. She's knowledgeable. Her team is responsive. She's got great bedside manner, and that really, you need a doctor that you connect with because so much of this process is just trusting and having faith and not fully understanding what they're telling you, but blindly accepting your fate and jumping off the cliff.
That's a brilliant way of putting that because you're right. This is very confusing. Even the really basic stuff, whenever you're explaining it to people, they just it's hard to grasp what's going on, right? And then whenever they really start getting into
Yeah.
scientific jargon, you're kind of like, you're losing me, and having that doctor there that you really like, I mean, that is it's not even just important, it's necessary. If you have somebody that you don't like, I'm convinced that you're going to have a little bit of a harder time going through transplant or ATG or just the overall experience. When you have somebody there that can kind of hold your hand, kind of talk to you like you're five, I mean that's just huge,
Yeah,
because it's a confusing disease, and
it is.
it's
You think
frustrating.
you understand it, and then you go to explain it to somebody else, and they have to follow up question. You're like, I don't know.
Right,
In
right.
my family, we've simplified. So, I understand red blood cell count, white blood cell count, platelets, hemoglobin, neutrophils, like all the key indicators that we're looking at 3 times a week. And I go to explain it to my family, and you can tell it's over their head. So we've just started simplifying it. Is it a green dot or yellow dot?
That's all you can do. With my doctors, they told me it was hemoglobin, neutrophils, and platelets. They said those are your big three that I really just want you to focus on those. You can look at these other ones, you might get a little more confused, but if you look at these three, and so that's just what I did. I'm not going to pretend I'm smart enough to understand, a CBC and everything that it entails. Whenever they
When
say,
we
hey, this particular count looks a little low, then I'm like, okay, what do we do? You just tell me, and I'm gonna listen.
The doctor that I didn't connect with, to put it nicely, who told me she didn't have a crystal ball. I had a bunch of labs, the bone marrow biopsy, like all of those tests that you can't even pronounce the name. And I remember jumping on a Zoom call with her, and she started out, did you have a chance to review your labs? And I looked at her as nicely as possible and said, pretend that I am in the finance field, finance industry, and you are the doctor. What do you think I should understand from my labs?
You just sent me Mandarin. I don't know what I'm reading here.
And I can put it into Google. We all know Dr. Google is not reliable.
Not
Dr.
at all.
Google said when you're diagnosed with aplastic anemia, it's the worst thing in the world. But you know, it's not a great diagnosis, but it's doomsday.
Right.
You can't Google your own results. If you could,
No
doctors would.
way. That's really one of the worst things you can do. The Dr. Google, I try to tell people all the time, you gotta resist that urge. Just please try to get away from that because you're only gonna see really scary stories. And it's important that they're out there, right? You need to have that info out there, but it just seems like it's more negative than it is positive, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
And
And I've noticed a lot in the Facebook groups that people like to share negative stories. Like I said in the beginning, it's been really hard to find somebody who's young and healthy going into this. And even when I was in the transplant center ward at Sloan Kettering on M7, I was the only one there walking around. Nobody wanted to talk to each other. It was so depressing.
mhm. Right. Yeah. It's well with aplastic anemia, especially too, because it is so rare, it's really difficult to find other people diagnosed with it.
Right.
And just finding connections with that. That's why I started this channel, is just because if we were diagnosed with leukemia, I don't think I would have ever made this channel because
Yeah.
fortunately, there's a lot of resources out there for, a cancer like that. But, unfortunately, it's because a lot of people have it. Right. And so I think I'm so appreciative that that's why you're here. So then you can be that young voice and you can be the one to, give a positive experience to kind of share with people like, hey, if you're recently diagnosed, that I had a good experience. It could be possible for you too.
A good
A
experience.
good experience. There we go. Maybe not positive. There's
0 out
nothing.
of 10 would I recommend unless
No.
you have to go down this adventure.
Right, exactly. So, okay, so if I'm following the timeline right, it was in July is whenever they finally said, okay, this is aplastic anemia. When did they say, let's start going to transplant? And did they choose transplant over ATG for you? And if we can go a little deeper into that.
So my sister was found to be a perfect match in September of 2024. And that's when they said, you have a perfect match. Your labs are going down quickly. Why would we mess around? They didn't want me to become transfusion dependent. So it was, but they didn't want to do it while I was still healthy, right? In case you have a miraculous recovery. So it was very stressful timing, when you need it, but before you need it too much.
Right,
And I used to say to people, it's like, landing a plane on the tarmac. Like you have a window, right? And if you're premature, it's bad. And if you're too late, it's bad. So they told me in October that we were going to transplant, and I have two little kids. The transplant involved minimum of 30 days in the hospital, and then followed by an additional 70 days in an apartment in New York City away from my family. And that is the part I can go through anything. I'm,
right.
pretty
Of
tough.
course.
But being away from my family, I'm like, first thing I said to my team is, I'm not missing Christmas.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they said, well, we'll try and do it for January then. Start getting your affairs in order. So I told my family, I told my husband, I didn't, I didn't tell my kids. I didn't want them to have that burden on them. So we make it through, we make it through the holidays, and then we get the transplant date of February 3rd, Monday, February 3rd. So in January, or I guess the end of December, I told my company. And what you were saying before about how there's all this awareness to leukemia, when you tell people that you have aplastic anemia with PNH, it's similar to cancer, but it's not.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, that's great. You don't have cancer. It's like, well, yes and no.
It's their
Yes,
first
it's
cousins.
fantastic. I don't have cancer, but this is a terrible disease.
Mhm.
Just because it's, not cancer, it doesn't mean it's not terrible. Um, I think that when you tell people, they try and look for the bright side, which is great, but there's no bright side for
Totally.
aplastic anemia and PNH. So we were moving forward to transplant in February. I told my bosses, I sat them down, and the look on their face, they're like, "What? You're healthy. Like, what do you mean you're going in for a bone marrow transplant?" So I started to tell people at work. We came up with I would take basically 6 weeks of medical leave for the transplant to cover while I was in the hospital, and then short-term disability after that if needed. And I said, I want to come back to work. I really want to come back to work. I love my job. I love my team. At this point, I had been there a year to the day. Um, and I don't want to take time off of work. I need purpose. So going into it, I remember the Thursday before I was in a meeting and I said, don't forget, I'm going out Monday. And somebody was like, bone marrow donor, right? You're the donor? I said, no, I'm the recipient. And the look of confusion on their face, you're so healthy. Why would you do that to yourself?
Right.
Again, this
Outwardly,
isn't,
yes. Inward, absolutely not. It is a train wreck inside.
It's an absolute train wreck inside. The
Uh,
plane is crashing.
right.
Um, so
Oh,
it,
goodness.
I guess one of the toughest parts is when somebody says, "How are you feeling?"
Yeah.
It's like, well, physically, I feel great. Mentally, I'm falling apart.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of putting that. Yeah, because you almost don't believe you're sick sometimes, right? And especially in your case where you didn't have any symptoms, you just had a blood draw, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, this doesn't look good," and you're like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
My labs did not match the outside. We went to Disney World right before my transplant.
yeah, yeah,
I am an amusement park and all the things that you shouldn't do with aplastic anemia, that's what I live for. Roller coasters. I remember my doctors, I said, "Can I go to Disney World?" And she's like, "Right now?" And I'm like, "Well, what if things go sideways with the transplant? Like,
sure,
uh,
yeah,
there might not be next year." And I don't mean death, but just your recovery. You don't know how
of
long it's going to
course.
take you to bounce back. And she's like, "Just be careful of roller coasters." And I was like, why roller coasters? And she goes, "You don't have any platelets. You have like 32 platelets, right? 32,000 platelets right now. Your platelets are dangerously low. And if you go on a roller coaster, it could be bad." And I said, "Oh, so my trip to Six Flags this weekend, I should probably cancel." And she was just like
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, theme park
this.
is already pushing it, but a roller coaster on top of that. I mean,
You
yeah,
go through this
yep,
like you only live once, right?
of
I've
course.
had cancer twice and now a bone marrow transplant. And it's hard for family, friends, everything to understand this. Like, why not go right now? My husband's like, "We don't always have to be doing things." I'm like, "Yes, we do."
It went one, and especially with your case where you've gone through so much already too. I mean, two different cancer diagnoses. I don't know the plural form of that. It's a little embarrassing. I don't know that. But and then you have this on top of it. Like whenever you're finally like healed and feeling better, you're like, you have to go live life. Like, and you appreciate even the mundane a lot more, right? Because
Huh.
then
Gives you
you
a different outlook. My
absolutely
daughter is turning 6 next week. My girls are 6 and 8. I had my first cancer diagnosis, or, when my appendix ruptured and they found the tumor when my daughter was 6 months old. So if you think about her life, I fight so hard to not be a sick mommy. My girls have no idea the medical challenges that I go through, because I don't want to be a sick mom, a weak mom. So when I had chemo and radiation in 2022, I worked full time the whole time. And my chemo day, I would go to the bouncy house with my girls. We had a deal with the owner of the bouncy house for like $30. She would let us have it to ourselves for an hour.
Oh wow.
And
That's
I
amazing.
would that was after chemo. I had a 6 hour chemo day.
Hmm.
And that was the only day that I felt up for it, right? Because your chemo day, then you start to feel
Oh
badly, then you
yeah.
start to feel better, and then it's time to go back in. Um, but it's been really rewarding for me to tough through it and be able, it's like a challenge. Like your
Right.
kids can't see you weak. You got to tough through this. Um, and I laugh, my little 6-year-old, she like gets a paper cut and she has a band-aid and she needs a cast on her arm and everything. And I'm like, "Kiddo, you have no idea." Like,
Right. I mean, they're gonna understand though when they're older, like, oh my goodness, that's what mom went through. Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah,
that's insane. I mean, it's remarkable, how far you've come so far. I mean, with those two cancer diagnoses, I don't know. And then the transplant, and then being away from them after the transplant. I mean, I'm sure that hasn't necessarily been easy, but here you are. I mean, you're crushing it. Um, did,
thanks.
did you have how did the transplant go for you?
So I had 10 days of conditioning. They did the RATG, which is rabbit ATG. They did, I forget the name of it. It starts with a C. the chemo treatment. Cisplatin was
Yeah.
my first time. It was,
Cytoxin, maybe?
I don't, it was, I think it was a little bit longer than that. Um, they did the RATG, they did the chemo regimen every day. They did total body radiation, which to me is that literally torture.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure if you had to have
No,
radiation.
from my personal anecdotal experience, from what I've seen, I feel like they give radiation to women a lot more than they give it to men. And
That's
that's just
interesting. I wonder why.
that's me saying that. Like, please don't put that in a medical journal. That's just kind of what I've noticed. I don't know how true that is. I didn't have to go through that though. Um, and so, but yes, I've heard radiation for people who've gone through it. They say that's the worst part, that was really difficult.
Radiation in 2022 is actually much harder than the chemo. Um,
Wow.
so when they did the total body radiation, they put you in the torture chamber. You have to stand up. You can't sit on anything. You have no support. And I always felt like it was like a bad guy was beaming me. You're weak in the knees, you're weak in the arms. You get this heat over your body, and you want to pass out. And I used to, what
How
helped for
long is it?
me, it
Sorry.
was, I think it was 10 minutes, but it was awful.
Felt like 10 hours, right?
Yeah, if there's a like bicycle seat, if you sit down, then they have to pause it until you stand back up. But you don't feel any better when you're sitting down. So you literally have to stand there. And for anybody going through this, what worked for me is I would have them tell me every minute. And that was like, okay, you tough it out in your head, you count to 60, a minute behind you. You tough it out in your head, you count to 60, another minute behind you. And you break it down into 10.
And how many times did you have to do this?
Only two.
Okay. Well,
It
at least it
was
was only twice.
the worst. I would rather go through a transplant than go through total body radiation
Oh
again.
my
I'm
goodness.
probably kidding, but that's the part
Yeah.
that stands out to me as the worst.
And there's like rabbit ATG was fine for you. The chemo was, or
I mean,
maybe
it's all relative.
uneventful.
It was
Yeah.
stuff I could tough through.
Okay.
My very first night in the hospital, they give you a bunch of tests for intake, and I tested positive for MRSA. And I remember Googling, can you have a transplant when you test positive for MRSA? This was 3 o'clock in the morning on my first or second night. And Dr. Google said no. And I remember I just started crying. Here I am in the hospital with all of my belongings. And I'm like worried they're going to kick me out in the morning to come back and try again. And the nurse came in and I was like, you're not going to send me home, are you? And she goes, no, you're committed. Like, okay, good.
We're gonna do this.
We're going to do this. But it was an extra challenge. You had to wear, the nurses had to wear extra gear when they came in. So they think I had a dormant MRSA
Okay.
infection, whatever that means, but they were going to watch it closely. So they did the full treatment for 10 days. You feel weak, you feel nauseous. You're stuck in a room, no fresh air. I think that is probably the most challenging part. Definitely walk the halls as much as you can. It was 14 laps and a mile. So I would do 2 miles 2 to 3 times a day, no matter what. I would put on my earphones and just walk the hallways. And I would speed walk to try and get my heart rate up. So you didn't, when you are stuck in a room, you feel it in your lungs, you feel it in your
Mhm.
muscles. And I didn't want that. So I would work out crappy as I felt. Um, and there are people, because you're healthy and you have a higher baseline going into it, there were people that are sick and they're in the hallway and they're doing the sick walk. They have their IV and they're just literally moping along. And it's very depressing. You feel badly for them. What I found that worked is instead of lapping that same person 6 times in the hallway, turn around and go
Okay.
the other way. Um, it feels a little bit awkward when you're approaching them, but
Sure.
then you're not trying to, you know,
One up
push
them,
past
maybe.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
They don't feel like the slow.
Right. Of course. Yeah, I mean they stressed that out to me too during my transplant. I mean, they even had a physical therapist come in and I mean, he was doing exercises with me and everything. And some of the exercises were hard, but I think that was the point, right? They're
Yeah.
like you
To
got to
push you.
build this up, right? Because you can't sit there the whole time because it just even for your mental health, it's really bad to just sit there and wait for your bone marrow to start working again. So that's what I told a lot of people. Just try to walk as much as you can. There's going to be some days. I mean, I had a couple of days where I was like, I can't leave the bed. Like I'm so sick right now. Um, but you got to try your best. You got to push through it because that's how you feel better at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. And you keep your baseline up.
Mhm.
I took medical leave, but I worked full time
During
from
transplant, you were
the whole
working.
day. We joked around that my sister, who was the donor, missed more work than I did. I set up the hospital tray that goes over the bed. I set up my double monitor in the corner, and I was running meetings from the
Oh,
hospital.
that's
Nobody had any idea. You just turn off your camera. And I remember the doctor walked in with their, the team of four, and I was in a meeting and I was like, "Oh, sorry guys, I gotta jump. Somebody just walked into my office." The doctor was like, "Are
all
you
right. You're off.
delusional? You're in the
It's
hospital."
Hey, that's great though too. I've seen a lot of people do that too, where they continue to work. Maybe not double monitor, leading meetings, but wow, you seem like you almost cruise through this, right? I mean, the
It was
radiation.
my family. I don't think that my family quite understands the fight that it took.
Sure.
It looks easy on the outside, like, oh, she's working, she's walking, it's fine. Um, I remember I used to talk to my mom at my lowest, and she'd be like, "Your voice sounds strong." And I'm like, "What does that even mean? I feel like crap. I'm like peeling myself off the floor. You're fighting for my
Of
kids, when I go home, I don't want to be a sick mom.
course.
Um, I don't want them to think, oh, mom's delicate, mom's sick.
Absolutely. That's very powerful too. I mean, your kids have an amazing role model in you. I
Oh,
mean,
thank you.
that's amazing to hear that. And it's important too. Um, so when you went through 10 days of conditioning and then you got your transplant, anything happen after that? Was it kind of boring where you were trying to keep yourself from going crazy, or how did the rest of the time go while you were in the hospital?
I worked a lot past the time, whether it was 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. They would come in around the clock and do your vitals. So you're on no sort of sleep schedule. Like 4 o'clock in the morning is the same as 4 in the afternoon. As much of a routine as you try and take, it just doesn't work. You're waiting out the time. I had infections, I had fevers, my port line was infected. You have challenges, but this is where it comes in that you have to trust your team without fully understanding what's going on. And if they're not worried, you have to really try not to worry. Um, so days 11 through 30 were just the normal. Every day you wake up, you get your labs taken. Nope, not a known engraftment. Guess it's just another day. And you get through the day where they manage your symptoms, the nausea, you walk as much as you can, count the number of medications on your IV pole. I think the most we were up to was like 17.
Yeah.
And find the humor in the journey that you just conquered, that you're
Right.
conquering. I think that that is very empowering, and just trying to focus on the positives of it. Not that there are positives, but you have to keep your head in a positive mind space. If you start to think, why me? This sucks. I miss my family. Then I can see how it would you would spiral really quickly. My girls at this point, weeks 2 and 3, were like, "When are you coming home, mommy?"
Mm.
This was the point when my hair fell out. So I remember I called my husband and I was like, "You're not even gonna believe I feel like worse than a comb over. Like it was balding and coming out." And he goes, "I'll be right there." And he went to his boss and said, "My wife needs me." It was a random Wednesday night. He drove all the way into the city with his clippers, and we just quietly sat in the bathroom while he helped get rid of my comb over. I had like
Oh,
half my
that's
hair
good.
left. It was awful. Um, that was terrible. And after that, you look at it as another milestone to get you through the journey, right? Like you have to go through all the low points before you can start feeling better. So at that point, you get your first, not quite green dot, but the first milestone dot, right? When your neutrophils start coming in and you get a little speck that they're then watching, and the excitement kind of starts. But then with the disappointment, it's like a roller coaster ride. You get three good trends, and then all of a sudden you're back at square one.
Hmm.
Um,
And
so
that's great to point out there because there will be days where your counts will start to go up a little bit, and then the next day it'll go down. And what one of
yeah,
my nurses told me, and I don't, this is, I'm not doubting her or anything, but I remember she told me, if we were to take your blood count right now, your blood draw, it might be higher than it was yesterday. Like your blood draw, like your counts change so quickly. Because yeah, you might go a little crazy once you're like, okay, if the pattern is showing this, and then the next day it goes down, and you're like, okay, like I'm just trying to get out of here.
that happened
And
to me. It
yeah.
was low and slow, and you're like, yes, I'm so close. And then it's like, oh,
Yeah, they did they ever tell you like, hey, I think you're gonna be able to leave early? Did they ever say that to you?
no, I was delayed.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
had
they
my
told me
kids.
that, and I was really, really bummed when I didn't get to leave early.
Why would they even tell you that? That's awful. My doctor
Yeah.
said 30 days. There was never a discussion. It was like maybe if your counts come in, but there was no
Sure.
glimpse of my counts coming in early.
So you had an extended stay then. Yours was more. How long were you in there?
37 days.
Oh,
Yeah, it was terrible. I had told my kids we had a date when I was leaving. We had a
man.
plan. I was going to sneak out to Connecticut and give them a big hug off the bus. I was so ready to go. It's hell in the hospital, and like the glimpse of freedom. And I think it was 2 or 3 days before I, without going into too much detail, I had very painful urination, like worse than I ever had. It was worse than giving birth. And I had an
Okay.
epidural pre-labor twice. It was awful. It was excruciating. And no matter, I had what they call BK virus,
Okay.
which if anybody gets BK virus, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is awful. And they won't let you out until it's under control. So
So
I'll,
if I'm understanding this correctly, your counts were there, but because you had the virus, they kept you in there. Oh, that's
yes. So
so much
now
worse.
we've
That's
told my
awful.
kids, I'm all excited to get out of
Oh
there.
no.
Counts are good to go. But now you have this thing that keeps you up literally all night, crying in pain. It was terrible. And it was the one time that I lost my cool on my team. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in excruciating pain. And they're like, you just need to hydrate. And I
Goodness.
lost it on the nurse. And I was like, I've been complaining about this now all day. I understand it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Had you addressed this 12 hours ago when I first mentioned it to you, it would not be 3 o'clock in the morning. So we
Right.
need to get a UTI test going. We need to get the medical team involved. Like, don't make me go in the hallway and get
Sure.
somebody's attention, because I'm not going to sit here and suffer in silence. They originally did a UTI test and it was negative. And then they came back. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Um, and I'm like, this isn't normal. And they're like, well, you don't have a UTI, so just drink water. And I was like, okay, this needs attention. They did another UTI test. It came back positive. Then they did the BK virus test. It came back positive. They put me on medication, but the symptoms have to go away. You have to improve. And that took like an extra week. And again, they can't tell you a time frame.
Right.
They're not going to say 4 days and you're ready to go. It's every day. Is today the day? And they're like, nope. So I remember I stopped telling my kids the countdown and they would say, when is mommy coming home? And it's like, oh, really soon. I
They were just
had
at the
a hat.
mercy of this virus.
I couldn't even explain to them how much pain I was in. The worst part of my transplant, it was the last week. You are barely keeping it together mentally, being away from your family, no fresh air. Like it's prison. It's solitary confinement.
hmm
Um,
I've told people I would be so bad at being in prison, and so I have not that I break laws willingly, but I mean I go the speed limit now. I mean I do not I
yeah,
don't want to do anything that could get me in trouble just because it is solitary confinement. It's really hard.
yeah. So my mom and my husband came out the day that they were breaking me out, and I made it very clear to my team, do not tell me I'm leaving and then retract it. Like, tell me I'm
Mhm.
not, right? Like, don't get
Right.
my hopes up, like you were saying. Don't tell me I'm getting out and then I'm
Yeah.
not. Like, mentally, I can't take it. If I'm told I'm leaving, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So it
Absolutely.
was like day by day, am I leaving today? And finally they said yes. So my mom and my husband came in to break me out. My suitcase was already packed. They did the big parade down the hallway where all the nurses and stuff, they cheer, they make noise. And I was like, yep, goodbye. And we beelined it to
Peace.
the elevator. I just, I just I didn't want to be there anymore. And
Of
then
course.
we went down into the lobby and we had to wait for the car. And of course, the car's parked a mile away. And I'm like, I just want like fresh air. And I remember I went and I stood outside the hospital and like New York City hustle and bustle with the traffic and everything. And I just took a deep breath. And it's like, I said to my mom and my husband, if I have to go back in here, you're gonna have to knock me out. Like I'm
hmm
I'm free. I'm done. I'm not going back.
Yeah, no way. It's such a grind is what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, you really gotta build up a mental fortitude going into it. I don't think a lot of people realize like how tough that is, just being in the same spot day after day. So after you got your transplant, you're heading home. How was your recovery after that?
I kept moving. So I went back to work full time, even though I was already working, but I came off leave, right? Before that, I was just volunteering my time.
Sure.
Um, we had my stepmom very nicely arranged an apartment in New York City. So it was the first month or so, not even, I was really good about staying in the apartment and my kids were going to come in on the weekend. We had this whole plan. So I was released from the hospital middle of March. By middle of April, I was sneaking home on the weekend. I told my doctor, I just want to go home for a day.
Mhm.
And she was like, okay, but I mean, we're 45 miles from the hospital. The only reason I had to stay in New York City is because of traffic around here is so terrible. It can take 2 or 3 hours to get to the hospital. So on the weekend,
Mm.
there's no traffic. So I started going home on the weekend. We made the most of it with my kids. They would come into the city. I mean, how often people go on vacation to the city? How
Oh
often do
yeah.
you get to spend the weekend with somewhere to stay? So my husband would bring the kids in and we would go to Central Park. And there are guys there who'd make bubbles and go on the playground and we would explore different outdoor things in the middle of March. The Central Park Zoo is wonderful. We got a membership there. So it was like visiting mommy in the city versus like visiting sick mommy. And I put a
Oh,
mask in my pocket. And anytime I would avoid public bathrooms, avoid crowds, all that stuff. But anytime you're like in close proximity to people where you can't avoid it, just stick a mask on.
Yeah,
So I would say that I forced myself to bounce back pretty quickly. And getting out of the hospital was so motivating. I'm like, I'm out, I'm getting better. Like, this is a trajectory going upward. Ride the wave. And
absolutely.
every day you feel better and better. But
It's
with
it.
setbacks,
Yeah,
I would show my family the trend of the dots going up, and they'd feel like, this is great news. And it's like, well, no, because 2 weeks ago it tanked. And next week it might tank again. So while you celebrate the wins, you're not like, wow, breath of fresh, sigh of relief. Like, I have a green dot. Like,
right.
you temporarily have a green dot. And then
Absolutely.
next week you have zero and they're sending you in for a bone marrow biopsy again. Like, it's all
So,
over the place.
so since you have come home from New York, then how has life been to you? Your hair is back. It looks amazing.
Thank you. It's growing back in. I've upgraded my wardrobe with more pink. Uh, the haircut almost looks intentional at this point. I saw a friend of mine who, we didn't tell very many people, and she's like, I love your haircut. Like, not intentional, but thanks.
Hey, that's just tell them that's what I'm going for. Thank you.
Exactly. I mean, I look healthy before and I look healthy after. So nobody really wants to know the bad part of your life, you know?
Of
So
course.
I'm right now I've always had really long hair. It gets in your face. It's hot. So that was one thing I enjoyed for the summer. You have to take the wins when you can, right?
Oh, of course.
So this summer has been pretty normal. You only live once. You can live your life safely. I have a mask on me usually. We've gone to the amusement park. I've gone on roller coasters again. There was so much I couldn't do leading up to it that my doctor tells me I'm a slippery one.
Yeah,
I ask her every visit, when can we go to Disney again? Like, give me a date, right? When can I go on a roller coaster? And she's
of
like,
course.
there's no medical study done on any of these things because most patients aren't like you. Like, you don't do a bone marrow transplant and then 6 months later, you're fine. I feel fine. I feel back to pre-transplant. I think my brain is a little bit like Swiss cheese now, but who knows which of the chemo treatments, which of the radiation or the bone marrow transplant, or the fact that I work full time with two kids,
Right.
with a serious medical health.
Even minus all the medications you're going through, I mean, anybody's brain is just
That's
kind
what
of
I mean. What's
scrambled egg,
normal?
right? It's very overwhelming.
Yeah. So I go back to the office in 2 weeks, full time. I've been working remotely for a while. Thankfully, my employer's been really supportive. So they're very excited to have me back. I'm very excited to go back. Um, I snuck off to Broadway yesterday. We went to go see The Lion King with my daughter and her Girl Scout troop. I had a mask and hand sanitizer.
Of course.
Might not be for everybody, but you only live once. And these memories, when I first got home after transplant, my daughter was going through her communion. How, on what planet would I miss that?
Oh,
So
for sure.
I sat in the back of the church. I had my wig on. I told my doctor I wore a mask, but I did not because I stood in the back of the church away from people,
Hmm.
but you want it to be, it's a balance. Your life
Right.
becomes a balance where everything is a calculated risk. Do you risk missing out on your daughter's communion, or do you just try and navigate it safely where you stand in the back of the room, you're away from people, surrounded by the five people from your household
Hmm.
or your immediate family?
Right.
Um, I am blessed to have a wonderful support team. My husband took care of my two kids. My family stepped in. You need a caregiver full time after the hospital. We would joke around that they were more of my jail keepers and not my caretakers because they kept me home when I
Yeah.
wanted to
I
not
like
be
that.
home.
I wish I used that. That's great.
But it got to the point where, I'm very particular about food, and I don't think anyone's going to read the 47-page pamphlet that they sent home with you. So I was cooking, and I said to my doctor, I'm cooking myself. I'm doing my laundry. Like, I'm independent. At what point are we going backwards by me letting somebody take care of me? You're supposed to
Right,
move. You're supposed to keep going.
right.
Um, so yeah, it's wonderful that they were there, but it was a roommate situation. We would binge watch movies and hang out together because when you're 40 years old, how much time do you get to spend one-on-one time with your parents again?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So my mom, my dad, and my stepmom all took turns, and it would be a 3 or 4 day rotation. And then I started to sneak home to Connecticut. It became, it went from Saturday night to I would leave Thursday morning and come back Sunday night,
oh, that's
stretching the
that's
envelope as
great.
much as you can.
Yeah, it
Just
is.
don't tell my doctor.
I'm gonna make sure your doctor specifically can't watch this video. So the secret's
Just
safe
block her.
between all of us, and your doctor will never know. But yeah, you're right though. I mean, you do have to live your life. Because otherwise, I mean, not to sound cliche, but life will literally pass you by. I mean, you have to be able to be there for those special moments like communion. Like there was no way you were gonna miss that. I mean, that's just it's way too important. And I think it's very inspirational how you've handled all of this where you're still working through it and you have two kids like that's not easy at all. I mean, you're not juggling three balls, you're juggling like 10, and you can't drop one, right?
Yeah.
And it's very very inspirational how you've been able to handle this. And I mean, on top of the cancer that you've had to fight twice, like that's crazy. I was not expecting that whenever we started this. That kind of blew my mind. And so I think you've given a lot of people a lot of hope with what you've gone through and also perspective as well. And I think it's really great how you've handled all of this. And
Thanks,
I,
Mark.
yeah, of course. I mean, I'm glad that you were able to, speak today and so openly, because and also so openly so soon after. You only got your transplant 7 months ago, if I'm looking at this date correctly.
Yeah.
Like it's still very fresh and raw. Like it just happened, right? Some people need some time to be able to do it, and so I think it's great and it's also healthy, being able to share this. And so I have two more questions. There's always one that we always end off with, but I'm gonna throw you a little bit of a curveball. Um, I live in Tampa, and so the fact that you go to Disney and you don't tell me about it, like I'm a little upset by that. So, maybe next time you'll tell me you'll
We
come to
have three
Disney.
trips planned for next year.
Let me know the dates. We'll go over and we'll meet you.
Maybe I'll meet you at Busch Gardens and we can do a roller coaster together.
Busch Gardens is
I know.
15 minutes south of me. It's so close. It's right next to Moffat where I got my transplant. So that sounds amazing. So that's number one. But number two, and we will always end every video with this question, and that is, what advice would you give someone who is recently diagnosed with aplastic anemia?
Um, I have a couple pieces of advice. Find a doctor that you trust and that you click with. Knowledge and bedside manner are equally as important. If they make you feel like you're a burden, if they make you feel like you're a hassle, if you can't have full faith in them, then don't jump off that cliff. Um, you have to have a very strong team behind you. Positive mindset goes so far.
Yes.
Focus on the end result. The end result is living your life. And I tell people, like, I didn't go through hell to not live. Don't be afraid. to live your life with. It's your new normal. And rely on friends and family when they ask to help. I have a very hard time doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's that's great. And I think that especially number one, finding a doctor who you connect with and you relate with, um, that's the first time I've heard that advice from anyone. And I think we take it for granted whenever we do find a doctor who we connect with because you maybe didn't previously have someone there before that you didn't connect with. Putting it very politely, right?
You
Um,
learn, right? And when you're in that situation, it's like I wouldn't have gone through transplant. I might have because I feel like I had to, but you don't have to. There's always a doctor out there. It's worth traveling a little bit further.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And having a positive mind, the whole thing is so mentally challenging,
I
physically
I
too, but
would
equally.
almost argue. I don't know if I even believe this yet, but I think the mental part is worse than the physical part, at least from my experience from it. But
You have to acknowledge that it's
yeah,
hell to go through.
and
Um,
and it's day by
and
day. Got to take
by
it
day.
one day at a time, one obstacle at a time too, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're going through what was the virus that you had?
BK virus.
Let's just fight BK virus first before we think about something before the next obstacle, right? I mean, that
Focus on the horizon. The goal
there
is
you
to
go.
get back to your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's I think it's really great how you've handled this. I think you know, you've done a lot of good and I think you'll continue to do good. And
Thank
do you
you.
have any plans for your rebirthday? Any special plans?
I do actually. So I have tried to explain to my husband how important it is to go on vacation because I outlined my vacation plans for next year. I can't get on the airplane this year, so next year is fully booked.
There you go.
Um, February, I want to go to Disneyland. I haven't been in 15 years. My kids have never been. I want to spend a little bit of time in San Diego. And I also want to go to Disney World again. So one is going to be in February and one is going to be for my 40th birthday in April.
That's amazing. But that's yeah, that's awesome.
I am
Traveling
taking
after
full
a
advantage
transplant.
of my
Yeah.
birthday trips next year.
Absolutely. You have every excuse in the book now to travel and do the things that you want to do because you've been held back. You know, you're not able to travel as much. I mean, I'm sure even in New York City 15,000 times in your life because you live in Connecticut, right? So you
We
got
just
to
went
go
yesterday. Yeah.
outside. So, well,
But we did this summer, we went away. We went to the Poconos. We did the little weekend. We went to Newport. We did little weekend
sure.
adventures
But
outside.
the plane trips, those are the, you know, the ones that get you really excited, right?
Yeah,
You gotta start small, like you said, the you know, the regional trips maybe, right?
right.
Because my wife and I, we would go to Orlando for myself and maybe Miami. But yeah, once you get on that plane, I mean, you're gonna be smiling ear to ear.
Freedom. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. But Allie, thank you so much for this amazing interview. Again, I think you're helping out a lot of people with your advice, number one, and also just how positive your experience was. I mean, it was very difficult, but obviously, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, I think it's really amazing everything, you know, how you've handled this and you know, very inspirational. So thank you so
Mark.
much.
And thanks for what you're doing, bringing awareness to it.
Of course. So, all right. Any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to say, or are
I think
you
we
all good?
covered a lot.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much again, Allie.
Thanks, Mark.